yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Hello and welcome to Jen Taylor Rerouting, where being rude is never acceptable, but sarcasm is welcome and swearing isn't always a bad option. Let's get started. Hello everyone and welcome to Jen Taylor Rerouting. Thanks for tuning in. If you need more information, just go to jentaylor.net, where I have everything at your disposal, from what it's like to live as a mom to 13 kids, to my podcast, public speaking, coaching, or purchasing my book. All in one place, jentaylor.net, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Today I have the pleasure of chatting with Jen Virtanen. How are you, Jen?
Good, how are you?
Good. We have some amazing things in common. First, we were both born in 1970. We have the most popular name of like 3 generations.
Yes.
So there's a second N on the name Jen for me. I don't know why that happened or where, but I felt like it singled me out, which is, that's the lie.
I was Jenny until I was 18 with an IE. So I feel ya.
That's special. And you were born and raised in Wisconsin. So we're just gonna kind of jump in here. You do have a website. It's your name. And
yep.
So jenvirtanen.com, it will be in the show notes to be able to get in touch with you. And just your story on there is pretty fantastic. So
fantastically awful.
But, yeah, well,
fantastically awful.
Yeah, mine's fantastically awful. But you know, that's what builds us into who we are today. So we can talk about that first if you'd like. Tell me some of the things that are going on with your business now and what you've done business-wise.
Yeah, so I'm actually launching my own podcast on, cross my fingers, September 27th. So not sure when this will release, if it'll be out there yet or not. But really, I want to have conversations with people who've had the emotional shit kicked out of them, much like I have. I happen to have a lot of resilience and grit and determination and tenacity, and we'll run into the wall 10 million times and get right back up. I mean, that's just my personality. And I love finding other people who do that, much like yourself, right? I want to normalize those conversations around mental health, depression, the struggles that we have. I just have, I guess, an open way of talking about it that people relate to and are like, oh, well, I guess me too. And I love hearing those me toos, because then people, it's almost like that permission or freedom to open up a little bit more. And that's when we get to the good stuff. That's, for me, when I was able to kind of start my healing, is when I could just feel like I could talk about those things. I didn't have to keep them stuffed in anymore. So that's what my business and podcast is about, helping others do the same.
You've done other stuff kind of peripherally or surrounding that. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I had left a corporate job. I'd been there for 14 years, and I decided I wanted to be a life coach. There was a lot going on in my life at that point in time. So I wanted to be a life coach, and then I was like, well, no, it was actually a health coach, and then a life coach, and then a business coach. And so I've dabbled in that online space, and I've actually done quite a bit of business coaching. So I've seen a lot of behind the scenes of businesses, but it never felt right to charge for that. And so now I actually do it for fun. I love taking entrepreneurs, especially women, under my wing and just helping drive them strategy and brainstorm and ideas and execution. And I have a project manager background by trade. And I've always operated really well in that, the strategic down into the execution layer. So yeah, and now I work with single mothers in a mentoring capacity for a local organization. And that's the work that I want to move forward into in this next iteration of my business. I really love, helping people in any way. You'll have to edit that out. Being that I like to call it an emotional sidekick. I don't know if I'm a coach. I don't know if I'm a mentor. Right now, I kind of don't care what I am. I just want to help people. I want to help them tell their stories.
Well, the podcast is a great platform to do that on. And I always love how much every story is like our stories are remarkably similar. But most of the time, the stories are very different, the struggles, but how we feel and what helped us and how we got help are very similar. So I like to kind of build that as a toolbox, the arsenal of strengths that you can get from getting out of the struggles. So let's get into your struggle.
Yeah, let's do it.
Born in 1970 in Wisconsin.
Woohoo.
So, so how many kids were in the house? Tell me about life growing up.
Yes, life growing up. So I do have a younger brother. He's about 6 years younger. And when I was about 8, we moved from big city, Milwaukee. Maybe it's not that big, but it was to me. Big city, Milwaukee, to very small town, Wisconsin, where my mom had grown up. And I remember, even at that young of an age, I didn't feel like I fit in. I just begged to go back to the bigger city. But it was about that time that my dad started showing signs. I didn't have a name to it, but signs of mental illness. So he does have that. And again, signs of that. And it started with, gosh, I was going back, way back in time.
Signs of mental illness.
Mental illness. And it would be something as simple as accusing me of hiding his hairbrush or a hair dryer, and it escalated from there. To the point where now I have no contact with him, and I haven't for a couple of years. But growing up, it was very much, I saw myself, I still see myself as that warrior. I was the one to protect my mom and my brother. My mom admits now that she's very much a victim of the same emotional abuse that we went through, but she'll admit now that she was very checked out during that time. That was her way of protecting herself. But I remember when I was 12, I was told, and you have to, for years and years and years, my whole entire life, I remember begging my mom to leave, take my brother and I, leave my dad. And she wouldn't. And I never understood why. And when I was about 12, she told me that professionals had told her, if we leave, he will most likely come find us and kill us. And even then, I still wanted to leave. The threat of death, I mean, this is so I don't want to say silly, but not like, but it was even the threat of death was worse than the idea of staying. We stayed. She actually divorced him last year. I'm 47 now. And so it took all that, and so there's a lot of wrapped up around healing from the impacts of my dad, healing from the impacts of my mom. I don't feel like she protected us. She very much does. Her story is her story. My story is mine. I completely get that. And I respect her story, even if I don't agree with it. Do you want to hear some of the stories?
Yes.
Okay.
I know you.
Yeah.
It's interesting because on your website you say, I saw myself as the warrior, which is part of my book is Hello, My Name is Warrior Princess. So
I love that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's a Wonder Woman whole thing, but I know you were trying to be the bait and the protector. And I think that's an older sibling thing, because I did the same thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, delve in.
Yeah. So I remember Sunday mornings, my mom loved going to church. It was the church she grew up in. And my dad would do everything in his power to make her cry, and not just cry, but that the sobs, right? Where you're almost hyperventilating because you're crying so hard. Every Sunday, I just got goosebumps. Every Sunday, like clockwork, make her cry. She would, to her credit, she would still go to church. It was a small town of 600, 700 people, so everyone knew everyone. Her eyes would be puffy. Her voice was always catching. And the shame that everyone was looking at my mom, knowing what was happening, right? That still is something I struggle with too, is that the adults in the community I grew up in didn't step in to protect us. I'll use that word protect a lot, because I really do think that's what it is. And so I would insert myself as best as I could. My dad didn't really come after me verbally. He would go after my mom and my brother. And so again, that's where that warrior concept came in, is just, I would put myself in front and I would try to deflect. I would try to get him to physically hit me. He never did. But I remember once, in one of those times, begging my mom, why can't the cops come take him away? Why? I don't understand this. And she said it, he had to be a physical threat to himself or others. And so it's like, okay, well, I'll take that on then. I will get him to physically threaten me. Like, duh. It just felt so logical. But I still have, we had this vestibule, and he would back me into a corner and just get so close in front of my face. And just the yelling, the verbal abuse, and the spittle that would come out, and the rage, and the rearing up of the hand, and just coming so close. And I remember thinking, please do it, please hit me. Like, I can take this. I'm strong enough to do this. I am strong enough to weather whatever you do. I can take it. And he just never did. And that pisses me off. Like, yeah, I gave the opportunity, and he just never went that far. So he was never, we were never able to get him removed. And it actually wasn't until last year, maybe the year before, that, I always identify as the warrior. I always identify as the mama bear. I will go to battle. I will hurt myself, for my children, for my brother, my mom. But it was a realization that I'd been carrying this sense of failure. Because I was never able to protect them. I couldn't. I didn't see it as protecting myself. So again, I ask, who was there to protect me? And that's a really hard question. It's hard to hear the answer, because no one was there to protect me. No one had my back. So yeah, it's coming to acceptance with that. There were times we would be, oh God, one of the most awful was we were on the way to Thanksgiving at his parents' house. We're in the little Chevette, if you remember the 1970s, 80s Chevette. So we're cramped in there. And he just very nonchalantly says, yeah, before we left, I drowned Rhubarb. Rhubarb was my 9-month-old puppy. And it was so nonchalant. And the look in his eye, it was like this gleam. And then we had to go be normal, right, with his family, processing this. It was about halfway into an 2-hour ride. So you're stuck in this small vehicle with this person who just killed your pet, right? I was actually talking to my mom about this recently, and she said, that was the day that she believed he could kill us. So again, it's the child in me that's still healing didn't feel like she protected us. And, her story is she did. She was afraid that if she left with us, we'd be dead. So we'd be riding down the freeway like nothing was wrong, and just all of a sudden he would like pull up on the emergency brake, and we'd go skidding into oncoming traffic. And it's scary, and the point with that story is you're always on eggshells. You never know what to expect. You're always tentatively expecting that something out of the blue is going to happen. And that sucks.
And that something horrible is going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I've never been afraid that my dad would come kill me. I logically, I haven't. A reoccurring nightmare is that he actually shows up at my house with my mom dead in the car, and he's come to kill my family. So that is a reoccurring nightmare I have, but I've never, again, I grew up thinking it'd be better off dead than I would be better off dead than to have to go through that any longer. He would walk around the house. There was a frying pan, and he would like bang his head with the frying pan and just shout at the top of his lungs, I'd be better off dead. I'd be better off dead. And I'm just like, yeah, please do it. Kill yourself. Because that takes then we don't have to worry about it, right? We don't have to worry about our lives. We don't have to be subjected to this abuse. So come to find out in my early 20s that my dad was diagnosed with bipolar and borderline personality and a slew of other stuff. And he did go on meds, became very zombie-like. So it was easy to be around my dad because he just kind of wasn't there, right? He would still I was out of the house. My brother was out of the house at that point in time. And, he was still very emotionally abusive to my mom. And we would see that. But it was like, you can only say so many times to her, leave, we'll help you. Right. That was her choice to stay. She thought, because he has a mental illness, it's kind of like having cancer. And gosh, it's hard to talk about this sometimes because mental illness in and of itself is not a bad thing at all. I suffer from depression. I'm very open about that. I want to normalize those conversations. I think it's when you don't get the help that you maybe can. In my dad's case, I don't know if he's a trapped soul. I don't know what could be done, what he could do to not be emotionally abusive. I don't know if that's a true statement or not. I don't know. I would like to hope and think that there's something that could help my dad not be that way. But when after professional says, yeah, he's never going to not be that way. What do you do? Right. So anyway, years and years go by. I have children. My brother has children. My dad does really well when the kids are young. I'd say his mental age is probably about 5. And so when the grandkids, outpace his maturity, then they no longer become important to him. He no longer can relate to them. He, not that he would be emotionally abusive to the children, but he'd be a lot less careful about what he would say. And who knows what the line is there, right? Maybe I have a skewed perception of that. But he and my mom moved to Ecuador, and in about 5 years ago. And in Ecuador, they don't have the same access to medication like they do here. And so he went off his meds. And for a while it was okay, and a couple of years go by and it's getting worse and worse. And they live in a smaller community. And so he's kind of making a name for himself. Crazy Ken out there, doing whatever. To the point where my mom did, this pisses me off. My aunt and uncle went to visit and a couple years ago. And they were like, Barb, my mom's name, Barb, they observed some behaviors that were just normal to me, but they're like, you can't do this. And so then my mom decided to leave. I'm like, really? That was your trigger to have?
Well, everybody's got one, right?
I know.
Well, that is sad. And
yeah,
we're also talking about the 70s, and I'm not making any excuse.
Yeah.
But if you research a lot about the 70s and just socially how things were set up, what was acceptable and not, talking about mental illness is still a huge issue. There's a stigma behind it. So kick it back 40 years ago, and that is not an excuse.
No, it is what it is, though.
I understand what you're saying, that your mom felt like by staying, she was protecting you. And I almost can reason that out in my head, how she got that thought process.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
By staying and kind of keeping the peace and holding your breath and walking on eggshells, nobody has to die, because that's the threat.
Right.
But Jesus. So
Jesus, Mary and Joseph.
What were you and your brother pretty close, and how are you still?
Yeah. So my brother and I, 6 years apart. So we weren't close growing up. Just age, nothing, not personality wise. It was just an age thing. I'd say we're close now. He very much struggles with the same things I do around our parents. So again, I've been no contact with my dad for a couple of years now, but before then, when we had family get-togethers, my brother and I, a couple of days before we know we're going to see our parents, the anxiety kicks in, and we become, I'm going to say, pretty awful people to be around. Awful to our spouses, our children, just kind of mean and biting and very impatient. And it's steeling ourselves for what we're going to walk into, right? If you've read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, I mean, it's not hard for me to put myself back in these situations and have my body feel like it did at the time, and how awful and scary and all of that, right? And so every time we knew we were gonna, sorry, my dog's just barking. We'll pause for a sec.
All good.
Yeah, so every time it's just, and my husband and his wife are just saints to put up with us and to understand this is why, and to not take it personally, and then to help the kids, just take on a little bit more during those times, if you will, just really be gentle on us. So my brother and I, we have very similar mannerisms. It's pretty fun when we're together. Yeah, I'd say we're close now. Yeah,
That's
very
amazing.
similar too. Yeah, and that's why I don't cut my hair short, because I would look like him. I don't want to. My brother is very handsome, but he's a dude, right?
Well, we both have great hair. That was another thing I overlooked.
Yeah.
Similar, I mean,
Yeah.
there is that. You don't need to cut it.
No, I know. It's pretty good.
So, does your brother have similar memories as you do? Because I have a younger sister, so I mean, I'm asking this on a personal level too, because there's an age difference. So you're at a different place socially, emotionally, and when the same things are happening, and also we could both be at the same conference and hear someone speak and walk away and discuss it and have totally different perspectives, absolutely. Right? So what's that part like for you two?
I think that, so I don't want to speak for my brother, but I think that he still has this romanticized idea of what my parents could be. For example, when my parents have, like my mom, they've left each other a couple of times and always gotten back together, except this last time. But he would get so mad. And I'd be celebrating, and then I would get so mad when my mom took him back in, So I think it's this very similar, like, yeah, I don't know if he feels as strongly quite as I do. Like, I will say, I want my dad dead. And that feels like I feel like an awful person saying it, but that's my truth. It would just be easier.
Well, coming from a very similar background, I completely understand that, and it doesn't sound horrible to me.
It's hard not to judge that, though, right?
It's very hard not to judge.
Yeah. I don't.
Ourselves.
Yeah. I don't know that my brother has that same level of hatred, disgust. Like, I don't know how to name that emotion. It's something that my entire life, once I was emotionally more mature than my dad, that's been my truth.
Right. Now, you describe yourself as surrounded by people and dreadfully lonely.
Oh, yeah.
And then we have these underlining feelings I want to talk about, and I'm going to make some assumptions, and you can correct,
please.
That you're not worthy of being loved. I mean, I remember thinking, if I was smarter, if I was more athletic, if I was prettier, if I was taller or shorter, I mean, it's like junior high school on steroids. You're never going to fit in. And if I could just not be the square peg in the round hole, I'd be loved and everything would change.
Yeah.
So tell me.
Yeah. This is where I think I differ from a lot of, I'll use the word victim. I don't know if that's the right word. I never saw it as, okay, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to kind of counteract it. I never thought I was to blame. I never thought that there was something I needed to do more or less of. I always looked at my dad and said that was a problem with him, not me. I didn't own that, right? I own protecting. Now, when we get to my mom, I'd say that's where it starts to kick in, is, never feeling good enough, not worthy enough to protect, not lovable enough to protect. There was and my mom and I have talked about this, for my junior year of high school. It was pretty much everyone thought I was going to be prom queen. Small town, okay? Not that big of a deal, but it was kind of this sure bet, right? And then I wasn't even asked to be on court. So this was pretty devastating to a 16, 17-year-old. But I had gotten the dress on the cover of 17 that year for prom season. So this was a gorgeous, gorgeous dress, right? And when I wasn't chosen for even court, my mom said to me, "Why did we spend so much money on a dress then?" Oh my God, that has stuck with me. I wasn't even worthy of the few hundred for a dress, a beautiful dress. And of course, she didn't mean it maliciously, I don't think, nor does she think. But when you grow up in this verbally, emotionally abusive, like I don't know how I could not have taken it that way, right? Whether she meant it that way or not, that's neither here nor there. What was the question? I'm kind of lost in my memory.
It's all right. That feeling of not being worth it, which is how you felt. So if you weren't prom queen, you weren't worth the dress.
I wasn't worth it. I was supposed to be Maria in Sound of Music, and I was Mother Superior. Going to college, I was stuck in an overflow dorm with 5 other roommates, and I met a boy and spent time with him, so I didn't get to know my roommates. And so then when it was time to pair up, no one asked me to be their roommate, and et cetera, et cetera. And all along the way, it's these little digs from my mom, right? That, well, no one, did you not make any friends? Did no one want to hang out with you? It didn't matter at that time that I was the one choosing to, go be with a boy, if you will. So when my parents, the night before they left for Ecuador, again, this is about 5 years ago, if I do my math correctly, we all gathered in Wisconsin Dells, my brother, his family, my 3 kids, and my parents. And I went to bed early that night because it's just, I don't even know what my mom said, but I'm laying in bed and I'm repeating over and over, like, I am worthy, I'm loved, I'm lovable, all frickin' night. And that was the only thing that, like, at that moment, I didn't want to be dead. I didn't want to be alive. Like, I can't even describe that level of darkness. And then just getting through the night, repeating that to myself, having my husband come in the bed and just kind of hold me. And like I told him, like, I can't sleep. This is what I'm saying to myself. And again, he's been around my parents enough. He knows the impacts they have on my brother and I. This wasn't a surprise, but that's my mantra if I'm going dark, is to remind myself. And then even ask my husband, just I need to hear it right now. Like, before I spiral, because that night was a huge spiral. Before I spiral, I just, please, I need to hear it. So he tells me. But yeah, sometimes I can remind myself and have that be enough. And sometimes I need an extra little help. How can you not, though? Again, I go back to no one. I feel my story is no one protected me. And that's the evidence I've been able to gather. Because my mom's story isn't my story. My story is my story. Her story is hers, right?
That's hard to separate out when you live in a really abusive, because that's a person that's supposed to be taking care of you and protecting you more than anyone else, your parents.
Yeah. And to hop in super quick, I became pregnant when I was 19, so the boy, and I became a mother at 20, and I didn't want to be a mother. I tried to have an abortion and I was too far along. I tried to adopt him out before he was born, and my mom begged me to let she and my dad adopt him. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? But I was 19. I didn't know how to have that kind of a conversation with my mom. And so that's why I kept my son. And thank God I did. Like, he's why I grew up and became responsible. And I mean, I'm so happy the way it worked out, but going through it in the moment, it didn't feel that way. Right. So the only reason I kept my son was so that my parents wouldn't raise him.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, you're still trying to feel worthy and loved.
Yeah. Yeah. I was too far along for an abortion. My parents wanted to raise him. I'm like, no, not happening. So yeah.
How did you
but when I became a mom at that young age, like that mama bear, instinct. You know, it's like now I have my own children to protect. And so I just like shut that shit down with my dad, you know.
Yes, I do now.
Yeah.
And how was your transition becoming a parent in the way that you looked at your own parents and what now you have this child that
Mm-hmm.
you know, if all's done correctly, you give birth to this child, regardless of the abortion or the adoption thoughts,
Yeah.
you'll kill or die, right? What was that
Goosebumps.
like rectifying the relationship with your parents after feeling that for your own child?
Yeah. So I want to say that through the pregnancy and all of that, my parents were, including my dad, they were so supportive every step of the way. They were incredibly supportive and continued to be so as I went through college and stuff. So it wasn't all bad, right? I have to remember the good, and that was definitely good. I think that like I'm remembering when my son was about 3 and he went to get rocks with my dad, you know, go collect rocks. And they came home. I could tell my dad had been in a rage, and my son was pretty traumatized by that. And that's when I kind of started not letting my dad like kind of have as much access to my son at that time, and then my other two when I had him. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Sort of. You put up different barriers. It's not that you don't
Yeah.
want them. And here's the problem with any kind of abuse, physical, sexual, emotional abuse. It's not 100% bad 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a shit ton of good sprinkled in there. And that's almost more confusing. It would be easier if it was just cut and dry, you know.
Yeah.
But it's a more of a purgatory. You don't know if it's good or bad or when the shoe's gonna fall. And so you want, I would think, your own kids exposed to the parts that are good, that you know are there and possible, but not to the things that aren't. I know I became so enraged when I became a mom and I knew what I would do for that child. I was enraged that they could have possibly felt that way and not done that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like I was pissed.
Absolutely. It's like it you know, I wouldn't say it kicked in for me right away because again, I was still struggling with, oh my God, I'm a mom. And like I tell this story on other podcasts is that when I was in high school, we had home ec. I don't know if you had that. I don't think they have it anymore. But you had to, you know, plan out what your wedding, your family, and your career, right? And I remember thinking, I'm going to get a hysterectomy because I don't want children. So when I was 18, I went to the doctor and tried to get one, and they wouldn't give me one. That's how much I didn't want children. I think a lot of that stems from how I grew up because I certainly have tendencies from both my parents. I mean, how could I not, right? And so even though I maybe didn't understand it at that point in time, I don't think I felt I could be a good parent. And I didn't want to do that to a child, right? So this is really hard because I keep getting lost in memories as we're talking. And so I keep forgetting what you're asking me because I'm in my body feeling it. And that's good. It's maybe a little bit hard for you as the interviewer trying to keep me on track.
No, not at all. I want to wind all over the place, kind of wherever it takes us.
Yeah. But you know, I 1920, I could feel that mama bearness, but it took a while, I think, for it to kick in that what protection of a child looked like, what that was supposed to look and feel like. And then it was the enraged, like, I didn't get that. Like it was the start of, oh my God, that was so fucked up. I'm gobsmacked that, is that a word people still use?
I think so. Let's just go with it.
You know, that I have turned out, my brother, that we have turned out as good as we have, because going back, we have defied the odds for our families, for ourselves and our families. And I credit a lot of that to the spouses we've chosen to help us with that, and ourselves for being strong, resilient, knowing there was a better way.
You knew there was a better way, but you have no idea what that looked
Right. No idea. No idea.
That's a little stumbling. Although I still think it's ironic you need a license to catch a fish, but
Right.
I mean, anybody, every asshole can have a child.
Yeah.
Not that I think that should be regulated, but there's
No.
no book, there's no guide, there's no like, oh my God, it's overwhelming and hard. And so you're really shooting in the dark, especially if you've had bad examples.
Yeah. And growing up, I didn't hear I love you. And I know that that was very common then, that people didn't go around saying I love you. So that's neither here nor there. But with my first husband, so I'm with my second husband now, but my first husband, who's the dad of my two boys, when I went home with him over a college holiday, and, the first thing he does is walks in his parents' house and gives his mom a kiss and says, I love you. And I was just like, what? And then like all throughout the weekend, it was just, even his dad, I love you. And it was just, there was so much love. I'm like, what? I've literally never seen this before, nor do I think it was all that common at that time. But seeing that, I tell my kids I love them so much, maybe a little too much. But even when my grown boys, so my boys are 27 and 21, when they're in front of their friends and they'll be like, they'll just drop a love you, mom. Like it's no big deal. And I'm like, oh, my heart just melts because I've tried to show it as much as possible, but I've also told them a gazillion times. They've never not heard that I love them. So again, words don't always matter, but that was something very important to me, that my kids know, they hear me say it. Because seeing the love shared between my boyfriend at the time and his parents, that was the start of showing me what it could look like. And I wanted that.
And it's so hard when you come from a place where you don't know what it's supposed to look like, but it doesn't look like this.
Right.
And you're out there kind of navigating by trial and error.
Yeah.
What looks right.
Yeah. So now
I want my kids to feel the opposite that I did. So what do I do to make them feel the opposite of I did?
Right.
It's very hard.
I was a reluctant mother, a reluctant wife. I was still in college. I had a lot going on and then trying to navigate all these feelings and new roles and but I got through it and I'm much better for it.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And I always feel bad. I tell my first daughter, like, you were the guinea pig.
Yeah.
I did not know what I was doing. And I knew I didn't know. And I was trying 150% every day, but some days that's a fraction. And some days it looks like a lot. It depends on everything going on. But I never didn't want to do an excellent job.
Yeah.
But I never saw an excellent job. There's no job description. There's no way to gauge how you're doing. So now you took kind of all of this and you actually turned inward. I call this self-care, which I think self-care people need to realize isn't a coupon book on Mother's Day. Self-care should be something daily and all the time. But you kind of turned yourself inward and talked to your younger selves. So go over that a little.
Yeah. Being in the self-care world for a while, you hear about your inner child. And I was working with a coach at the time, Kate Swoboda, and she had me do some inner child work. And so it stuck with me. Like I said, it's probably been about 6 years. But just recognizing that there were parts of myself that hadn't healed, that I was stuck at an age or different ages inside. And, that's just the way I approached it was, what does my 8-year-old need? What does my 12-year-old need? What does high school me need? And it was a way to have it make sense. Like it was a tangible question I could ask and then answer. Because up until then, I didn't know how to do that. I didn't have the tools to do that inner reflection. And that, again, it was just a little bit of something I could anchor to and it made sense. It was like, oh yeah, my my 8-year-old experienced this trauma. Like, what might have I, like, what today might still be impacting? And then the answers were pretty easy, right? Especially older, wiser me, who also has now raised 3 children. Like, I can look back and relate to the 8-year-old, the 12-year-old, the high schooler, you know? So yeah, it was just a way for me to get curious.
That's amazing to go back into that and ask what that age would want.
Yeah, it's really powerful. Yeah, yeah. And, you know, some people may think it's kind of weird, and it's like, okay, it's okay. Worked for me. Give it a try. But think about that. Like the 12-year-old that was told her dad would kill her. No wonder I have nightmares. No wonder I have trust issues. No wonder, you know? And I think what it does is I can then give kindness to those areas of myself that are maybe I don't like. Well, maybe I don't trust. Maybe I haven't built up friendships because of this. How can I start to heal that? What does that look like? Okay, let's do it. Yeah.
And you felt so alone, which I relate to that. I think a lot of people going through any struggle can relate to feeling like they're totally alone, even surrounded by people. And you let people in, but you don't really let people in.
Right. People, I feel like such a fraud. Not anymore, but it wasn't that long ago where, you know, people are like, you're so open, you're so transparent, you're so authentic, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, if you only knew what was going on behind underneath the smile, because I'm a naturally smiley person. That's my personality. I'm bubbly, sociable, relatable, you know, all of that. And it's like, yeah, if you only knew, you know, if you, to have someone think I'm transparent and open, I'm like, oh my God, I feel like such a fraud.
And I don't think, I've never said it in those terms. I never felt like I was being fraud. I was only allowing them to see what I wanted them to see.
Yeah.
It was still me. It was who I am, but it was definitely an iceberg thing. Like you're just seeing the very tip. There's so much underneath and I'm not showing it.
Yeah. 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 No, I felt very fraud because it was as I was getting into the self-help area, online business area, where we talk a lot about authenticity and vulnerability. And, you know, I was starting to open up. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting why I view it as fraud and you view it a different way. That's really interesting. I'm going to think on that.
We'll have to ponder that one. So
I know.
What you got with a coach and you're doing self-help, but how, I want us to kind of build your arsenal, the things that you built to get through. There's a lot to work through, right? So you got a coach. I think even coaches should have coaches.
Absolutely.
People totally minimize the value of having, whether it's a business coach or a life coach. I mean, it does not matter. Whatever area you feel like you're a little floundering, hire, it's worth it. You are worth it. You're not paying the coach, you're paying for yourself.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
And I'm not saying that because I'm a coach. I don't care if it's me people hire. Find someone that aligns with you. So you did that.
Yep. I did that a lot.
Yay. I did too. I mean, when I look back, I did it more than I thought I did.
I know, right?
So somewhere in there, I believe I was worth it.
Yeah.
Even though I don't think I realized that. So tell me what you built to learn. You went inward, you looked at your inner child.
Yep. Yep.
What else?
You know, I'm guilty of taking every class, signing up with every coach under the sun, trying to find the silver bullet, even though everyone says there is no silver bullet, right? And like logically, intellectually, I know there is no silver bullet. But part of it was almost this high I would get. It was like they were validating me. They were validating that I was a good person, that I was a kind person. Because up until recently, I had those stories that I wasn't a good person. I wasn't a kind person. And so I would get all this validation. You know, and it's like when one person said it, you're like, and then another, and then another, and another. And after a while, it's like, oh, wait. So as much as I have evidence that I might not be a good or kind person, there's a ton of evidence that I am. So let's get curious about that. So what's in my arsenal? I think it's that ability to I'm very self-aware, but then to get really curious and to ask myself the hard answers or the hard questions, right? I think when I left corporate, I was gone for about 15 months, and that was one of the worst depression cycles of my life. And I gained 60 pounds. And I realized, yeah, holy shit. Still recovering for that one a little bit. But I had to look in the mirror. It wasn't just my job that was making me miserable. It wasn't just this that was making me miserable. It wasn't just that. I had to look in the mirror. If I removed all the things that I thought were making me miserable and I was still miserable, well, now what? Right? So for me, it still goes back to curiosity. Yeah, I'm just really curious. I want to understand. And I think that's something that I've always, in my job, in my life, I always want to understand the other perspective, because I know there's more underneath the layer. I know there's more to why a person is doing something the way they're doing it. And I just want to understand why.
I love that curiosity about things.
Yeah.
And also that belief inside that you're not all of the bad things you've been told.
That was a really good story to untangle and then be able to set that aside. That took a lot of years.
And tough, right? It does. It takes a lot of years, regardless.
And it's exhausting. It is exhausting work.
And it's worth it.
Oh, yes, 1,000 times yes. I could have, so many times along the way, I could have, said, okay, this is it. I'm going to be a sad, miserable cow, because you see people do that, for whatever reason. I don't think you can force yourself to be ready. And so I kept trying to force myself to be ready to deal with certain things, and it wouldn't happen. But I just pick myself up, dust myself off, try again, right? And then all of a sudden one day, and I know the events leading up to it, but it was kind of like I was ready to let that story go. And it's, the trajectory from there has been phenomenal. Doesn't mean that there's other things that don't trip me up, but I'm 47, and I finally no longer think I'm this terrible human being who isn't worthy of having friends. Because that's what I thought. That was, yeah.
Did you ever feel like no one would like you if they really knew? Yeah, for sure. That people are so used to seeing a confident, self-deprecating, they're so used to seeing a persona. And like you said, that is me. But I didn't want them to see the ugly bits, because those are me too. And ugly, that's a subjective word. I don't mean, we each have our lights and our dark sides. Absolutely. And that's important to realize, that there's no one that's all light. There may be people that are pretty much all dark. I think that's
yeah.
But we're not all light. I love at the bottom of your website, you say words that are commonly used to describe you.
Yeah.
And of course, it's human nature. We want that list of the positive ones, right? Yep. And so you have a list of them that are awesome. Joyful, playful, irreverent, love that. No filter,
yep.
Love that. Transparent, which is it's hard to be transparent.
Mm-hmm.
So you have this list, and your favorite compliment, which I love, it made me think, like, well, what are mine? It is a lovely image. And then all the horrible things you're called, and you have
yep.
a list of that. And then you're very realistic that the truth lies in the middle. And that's what's important.
Yep.
That's what's important. You're not all of the bad things people said about you, but you're probably not always all the good things people have said about you. I would love to believe that. And you're very honest about that, and I love that.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm very self-aware, which is good and bad. It's a blessing and a curse.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is very true. And you're like we're all this huge sum of all of our experiences and baggage and things people have said, and we don't need to label it as anything. It seems like people are always trying to fit fit us in a box. And sometimes there's just no box.
Yeah.
You know? So, and I don't like the boxes. I think the magic happens outside of the box. In anything you're doing, business, anything you're doing, it's outside. It's outside of what we're trying to cram ourselves into. I have a daughter that's Alaska Native, and I adopted her, and we live in Reno. We don't live in Alaska anymore. So people don't look at her and recognize. So they're like, "Are you Hispanic? Are you Asian?" And she says yes to everything. Are you part Black? Yep. Because I just told her, just say yes. It doesn't. You don't have to be put in any box. Be everything at once and none of them. Right?
Yes. I love I'm this and this. Like, I'm awful and I'm amazing.
Yes.
I'm confident and I'm so not confident. Because it, like, day by day, sometimes minute by minute. And again, it gets exhausting. I get that, right? But that's who I am. And like, when I started accepting that, again, it's just like layers were ready to shed, right? Because I was like, I can be this and this. I don't have to be this or that.
Stop trying to force
So it's the and and the and.
It's the and the and. Yeah. Or the but and the or and the.
Yeah. Paradoxes, dichotomies, all of it.
All right. So now I always talk on the podcast, there's no one and done. It's not like one day you wake up and you're like, oh, I have arrived and I'm healed and la, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's more this journey and progression where you hit a point that usually, like there was a shift, like you're saying, like I'm more okay with myself. And I know you've hit that point, and what led into that other than the self-help? Was there therapy? I know your husband was a big part of it.
Yeah.
Find friends that helped. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to a couple of years ago. My mom kicked my dad out, and we were all happy. And a couple of months later, she sends this email, and in it, she says, she and my dad are back together. Again, this is a cycle, but she and my dad are back together. They want nothing more than to have the family be whole again. And that she apologized for spoiling my brother and I, and she did it to make up for our parents' tense relationship. And I was furious because what she did is she took all that stuff. Like I have to remind myself, I am not crazy. I was told my dad would kill us. I am not crazy. My dad drowned my dog. I am not crazy. Like I have to relive these things to remind myself, I am not crazy. I am not making this up. I lived through this. But it diminished everything, in my opinion. Everything. And it was like that day, that moment, that week, I don't know, but it solidified in me. My mom doesn't have my back. I don't know why that was the thought. Because again, I grew up feeling like she didn't protect us, but it was like in that moment, I felt so alone. Like I didn't even have a mother. Like who would say that, right? Now I can look back, I can reflect back and be like, she's still a victim. She's of the same mental, emotional, verbal abuse, right? She's still a victim. My dad was looking over her shoulder, telling her what to type. Okay. But what it said to me was, no one else but me can heal myself, right? No one else but me can take control of this. It was like, bam, bam, bam. That's what I did. It was like, because all my life I've searched for the mother, I put that in quotes, a mother figure to take me under her wings, because that's what I do for others. And no one was there to do it for me. So I've always been searching for it, desperate for it. That day I became that person for myself, and that looks like a lot of internal stuff. Again, asking myself what I need, being ruthless about getting that. But I became my own mother that day. And so that meant I had to forge a different type of relationship with my mom. And we're working on that right now. We're working very hard on that right now. But I had to tell her, like, you're my mom, but you're not my mom, right? There's a difference there. I don't think So I am annoyingly, stupidly good at finding the silver linings. And I had to go through that, as furious as it still makes me if I think about it. I had to go that because that is what sent my trajectory, the healing trajectory, that has made me a better mother, a better person, kinder to myself, where I have been able to go out and forge female friendships. Finally, I'm 47. 45 years of my life, I didn't have female friends. I mean, okay, so maybe between the ages of 18 and 45. I had a lot of acquaintances, but not I had no one I could call and say, "Hey, let's go to coffee. Let's go shop. Let's go do yoga. Let's talk." No one. That is not an exaggeration. um,
And it's very lonely.
yeah, very lonely. Because again, people see me, they see a confident, smiley, extroverted, which I'm not, but that's how I appear, person who think I'm the life of the party. And here I am. I'm like, no one invites me to parties, like, because I don't have anyone. That's very pathetic. Um, but again, that's what I had to go through to be at the point where I'm confident and comfortable now wanting to do that for others. Because you can look at me and think I have all of this, and here I am, so lonely. It's like heartbreakingly lonely, right? Heartbreaking for my husband to watch, because he knows my heart and how good it is. And and it wasn't that people weren't trying. I wasn't ready I wasn't healed enough to open up. But yeah, heartbreakingly lonely. And for all intents and purposes, it shouldn't have been that way. My outsides didn't match that. So I know I'm not alone. I know that there are other women out there who people look at them and think they're popular and and they're not. Popular being a very high school term, but you know what I mean. And they're not,
Right.
I didn't have a friend I could go confide in and share these heart things with. And I don't want to assume that everyone has that, because I know I didn't have that. And so that's the next iteration of how I'm serving the world. Yeah, I feel really strongly about that.
It's a beautiful thing when you can take your struggles and your successes and turn it around to help other people. So maybe their struggles a little easier, a little faster, a little less painful, a little less alone.
Yeah.
And so we both try to do that.
Yeah.
And that's far better. The struggles that you've had and the successes are far better than perpetuating.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom, of course, she's like, why would anyone pay for that? I'm like, you're clearly not my ideal person, right? You don't understand why. Like, I have spent so much money seeking validation from women and thinking if I hire them, then they'll be my friend, in quotations, right? Now, through doing that, I actually have met a lot of friends. That's been very good. But why I was doing it wasn't very healthy. But I wasn't getting it anywhere else from that female nurturing perspective. So I paid for it. That sounds like a sex thing. I paid for it.
Which isn't bad either.
It's not bad either.
But I get it. I mean, you were doing a lot of things at the same time, and only one of those was friendships or exploring the possibility of being less alone.
Yeah.
And actually, as a coach in lots of different ways, and you've been a coach in lots of different ways.
Yes.
That is part of what we're doing. You're not lifelong skipping rainbows friends. It's not like that. You're not necessarily coffee grabbing friends.
Yep. Yeah, it's a business transaction friendship.
Kind of, but it's more than that. I mean, because
no, it absolutely
is deeper.
Yeah.
So tell me, let's finish up on, tell me what you tell the people that are asking you. How do I make a difference in myself? What can I do? What's the arsenal of tricks?
For me, it is that curiosity. I'll go back to that. And I have this natural knack for asking the question that, and this comes from my corporate background, but I will ask or say what everyone else is thinking. I sometimes do it very awkwardly, but I kind of don't care because I want to get to the bottom of it. Whether it's a strategic problem we're solving in the corporate space, whether it's a problem I'm trying to solve with my teams, whether it's someone who's struggling with not knowing why they feel so alone, or not wanting to be dead, but not wanting to be alive. I mean, dear, such an exhausting place to live. Yeah, but it's that, let's ask the hard questions. Like, let's look in the mirror. I have zero tolerance, patience. Maybe patience is a better word for chit chat. It's just not me. Like, I want to go in deep.
So that's what we should encourage other people.
Ask the hard questions. Be like, again, peel back the layers, even if it's slow and painful and exhausting. Peel back the layers. Keep going. Keep asking why. Why do I feel that way? Why does that keep tripping me up? Why, when someone says this, do I, always feel sick inside? I still see a manager. It's the only manager that in all my years of corporate ever that has me feeling this way. I still run into him in the Skyway and I want to throw up. That was like 12 years ago. I still viscerally want to throw up. I don't think I've learned yet what I need to learn from the time I worked with him, but I'm still curious, right? Like, I'm not willing to let that visceral throw up reaction just go by the wayside. It's not ready for me to discover it yet, but it doesn't mean I'm not curious about it, right? So I don't want to boil it down to it's all about being curious, but it is the hard questions and being open and honest with yourself. Because like I said, when I was forced to look in the mirror, when I stripped away everything that I thought was wrong in my life and making me miserable, that still wasn't it. I had to look in the mirror. I had to realize where these things were coming from.
I think it's important for people to know the answer is not always
oh god
I think it's coming from or what you think it's going to be, and you have to learn to be okay with that.
Yeah, and I do not do well in the ambiguity. I think that's why I'm always like driving to the hard questions to get to the answer, because I don't operate well in an ambiguous environment. So I want to get to the nut of the matter as quickly as possible.
I love the curiosity and the hard questions, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun.
Well, it was painfully fun.
It was it can be both painful and fun.
And we're again not making a sexual joke, but we could be.
I didn't think of it that way, but yeah.
Jen, thank you so much. You can be found at jenvertinen.com. It will be in the show notes, and I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for the work you're doing in the world.
You too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening in to Jen Taylor Rerouting. Like, share, and of course, comment. I welcome input with attitude. Get a copy of my book on Amazon, Hello, My Name is Warrior Princess, or check out my website, jentaylor.net. And if you still want more, sign up for one of my coaching packages.